There's a pattern in history that every collapsing empire has followed, a hidden rhythm that signals when their currency is about to break. And right now, in 2025, the United States is hitting every single marker of that pattern. Not slowly approaching it, not flirting with it, hitting it, one by one, like clockwork. The signals are clear, unavoidable, and chilling. The first signal is rapid money supply growth. Every empire that faced a currency collapse started here. The government prints too fast, faster than the economy can absorb. Money floods the system, chasing the same amount of goods, and prices rise. At first, people shrug it off. Temporary inflation, they say. But history has shown there's nothing temporary about it when it's tied to structural imbalance. In the late Ottoman Empire, by the 1800s, the sultans were issuing more currency to pay their debts, flooding the market. Prices spiraled. Inflation became sticky. The empire's gold and silver reserves couldn't keep up. In Weimar Germany, the 1920s produced images of wheelbarrows full of money for a loaf of bread. Every attempt to print away the problem only made it worse. In 1970s Latin America, countries like Argentina and Brazil kept expanding the money supply in bursts, chasing government spending needs until inflation stabilized only at levels that impoverished the middle class and eroded trust in money itself. Now look at the United States. Between 2020 and 2022, M2 money supply exploded, trillions of dollars injected into the system. And for months, the narrative was that inflation would be temporary. Productivity didn't match the flood of cash. Sticky inflation appeared. Prices didn't calm down. The signals that had destroyed empires centuries ago were blinking red. Money printing wasn't theoretical. It was real, observable, and measurable. The math doesn't lie. When money grows faster than output, currency value erodes, and history shows that governments are slow to recognize it until it's too late. The second signal is reserve drain. This is the invisible pressure, the slow hemorrhage that takes decades to fully manifest. When an empire can no longer defend its currency with reserves, the stage is set for collapse. Britain after World War II faced this reality. Its gold reserves were depleted, its claim to global financial primacy weakened. France in the 1920s had similar troubles, trying to maintain the franc's value while resources dwindled. During the Asian financial crisis in 1997, reserves evaporated so fast that governments couldn't defend their currencies, leaving economies exposed to panic and collapse. The United States is following that same path. Foreign holdings of U.S. treasuries are declining. The share of global reserves held in dollars is shrinking. The system that propped up the greenback after Bretton Woods, that made it the reserve currency of the world, is weakening. Repo markets grow in importance. The world is slowly hedging against reliance on the dollar. It's not a sudden event. It's quiet, but these cracks run deep. Every collapsing currency in history faced this silent erosion before it broke. The third signal is the loss of foreign trust. This is the final domino. Once foreign investors, allies, and trade partners lose confidence, currency collapse accelerates. Argentina's repeated defaults, Russia in 1991, Spain in the 1600s, all examples where trust evaporated and the currency that had been taken for granted fell into chaos. For the U.S., the signs are already visible. Allies are exploring alternatives. BRICS nations are building parallel payment systems. Trade is increasingly de-dollarized. Gold purchases are on the rise. It's subtle at first. Nobody is panicking yet. But history shows that once trust erodes, it's sudden, brutal, and unstoppable. These three signals together, rapid money growth, reserve drain, loss of foreign trust, have always preceded major currency crisis. It's a pattern repeated across centuries, continents, and regimes, and the United States is showing all three at once. Not tomorrow, not next year, right now. Let's look closer at what these markers mean in practice. Rapid money supply growth isn't just about printing, it's about imbalance. When the government injects trillions into the system without a corresponding rise in goods and services, the result is predictable. Prices rise, savings erode, wealth is redistributed from the prudent to the reckless. The public feels it in everyday life, groceries, housing, energy costs. And central banks often respond with more policies that only exacerbate the imbalance, thinking they can control something they've already destabilized. Reserve drain is more subtle, but no less dangerous. A country's reserves are a firewall, a buffer. When that buffer shrinks, the government loses credibility. They can no longer defend the currency in times of stress. Every empire that fell ignored the early warning signs. They borrowed against the future, assuming their economic dominance would persist. And when the buffer vanished, there was nothing left to stop panic. Loss of foreign trust is the tipping point. It is invisible until it's obvious. Investors, allies, and central banks begin quietly shifting away. Trade flows reroute. Gold moves. Dollars come home. Suddenly, what seemed like stability collapses into crisis. It's like a dam breaking. Once the first cracks appear, they spread faster than anyone anticipates. Consider the historical precedent. Spain in the 1600s flooded the economy with silver but failed to maintain productive capacity. Gold flowed in, wealth flowed out, and eventually foreign lenders lost trust. Britain fought world wars, depleted reserves, and then watched the pound's global role erode. The Soviet Union, too, faced declining credibility, overextended commitments, and an economy incapable of sustaining its promises. Every empire that ignored these signals eventually faced currency collapse. Now think about the United States. Stage 1, money supply growth, trillions printed. Stage 2, reserves under pressure. Stage 3, foreign trust eroding. The pattern is undeniable, and the consequences, if history repeats itself, are severe. Currency instability doesn't just hurt investors, it affects everyone. Everyday life, retirement accounts, business planning, national security, trust in institutions.
This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It's happening. And unlike previous empires, the U.S. has leveraged technology, global interconnectedness, and a massive financial footprint to accelerate the sequence. The flood of capital, global supply chains, and intricate monetary mechanisms make the process more complex, but also faster. People often ask, does this mean collapses tomorrow? No, it doesn't mean a single-day disaster, but it does mean that the trajectory is set. The markers are in place, the pattern is real, and history has never shown an empire to break this sequence and avoid serious consequences. Every empire that ignored these signals paid a steep price. Spain's silver riches became meaningless. Britain's pound fell from global primacy to a regional currency. The Soviet ruble became worthless, and the state dissolved in less than 3 years. The mechanism was the same each time. Money flooded, reserves drained, trust vanished. The outcome was sudden, severe, and unavoidable once the pattern was complete. So what does this mean for the U.S.? At a minimum, it's a warning. Financial discipline, currency stewardship, and global trust aren't optional. Ignoring them won't buy time. It will accelerate the inevitable. Policy decisions, debt management, trade practices, and monetary policy all need to be understood not as abstract numbers, but as signals in a pattern that history has written repeatedly. The crucial point is that the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. Technology, military power, innovation, or global influence do not prevent economic fundamentals from asserting themselves. No empire has escaped the consequences of overextension, currency mismanagement, and eroded trust. Not Spain, not Britain, not the Soviet Union. And if history repeats, not the United States. This is why it's critical to understand the markers: rapid money growth, reserves drain, loss of foreign trust. Watch them, measure them, and see how they evolve. Every empire that fell ignored the early signals. Every currency that collapsed had these 3 indicators before the public realized the danger. History isn't fate, but it is a pattern. And right now, the U.S. is fully engaged in that pattern. Maybe reform will come. Maybe policymakers will recognize the danger before it's too late. Maybe the economy can adapt. Maybe trust can be restored. But the sequence is visible, the signals are real, the historical precedent is clear. And when you understand the mechanics, the consequences of an action are undeniable. History has already written the script. The only question left is how quickly we reach the final act. And when it comes, it won't be gentle. Currency instability will ripple across every sector, every household, every business. What was once unimaginable, a sudden loss of economic trust, a currency crisis, the reordering of global influence, becomes possible, even likely. We can watch it unfold, study the markers, and prepare for the consequences. Or we can ignore them, assume this time is different, and hope history skips the U.S. The evidence, however, is clear. The math doesn't lie, the pattern doesn't change, and the signals are flashing red.